Hey, what's up, all you YouTubers out there? In this video, what I will be discussing is the foods that we, or should I say, the foods that I was brought up on. But before I dive into that topic, I think it's extremely paramount and extremely important to let you viewers know that it is not my intention at all to be stereotypical, to try to stereotype any race, any culture, or any ethnic background. Um, just want to let you know up front before I begin discussing my topic that that is not my intention at all. Okay, so here we go. I've already established that I'm not gonna try to stereotype any type of race or any type of ethnicity. But I am half Puerto Rican on my mother's side. I'm also half Filipino on my father's side. I was born in 1976. And to be quite honest with you, on the Filipino traditional side, because I had both, I had the best of both worlds, you know, trying different foods. On the Filipino side, I don't know if any of you are familiar with these type of foods. I was brought up on highly sat, highly saturated fattening foods. On the Filipino side, I was brought up on lumpias. Um, a majority of you might consider them egg rolls that the Chinese make, but they're kind of like egg rolls. Pancit, it has noodles in it, and you could put a variety of vegetables and your choice of meat, whether if it's chicken, poultry, or even shrimp. I was brought up on that, and uh, I was brought up on eating a lot of sticky rice, which has a great deal of brown sugar, a great deal of coconut, and to make it even more double sweet, you would put you would put the topping on there, which is I don't know, caramelized coconut, I believe it is. So all I'm saying is that the sticky rice is already sweet enough as it is, and then you're making it, I don't know, I guess 5 times more sweet by adding more sugar, which is the caramelized coconut. So those are the ideas of the food that I ate being raised on the Filipino side. On the Puerto Rican side, which is very similar to the Hispanic, Chicano, Mexican side, you know, I was brought up on eating enchiladas and tacos, and the worst of them all was fried flour chips. I was brought up on burritos, enchiladas. I don't know if I mentioned that. Tacos. What else? Nachos. And so all I'm saying is that taking into account the mostly on the Hispanic side, taking into account the tortillas and the taco shells and the flour chips that of course are made out of flour. The problem with those foods was that they're very rich in flour, of course. They have a great deal of starch, perhaps a little bit of sugar. I don't know, maybe, maybe not. But the point I'm trying to make is that those type of foods are considered refined and processed, such as the layers that they, you know, the part that they use to wrap the lumpias. You know, the little square pieces. I know it's early in the morning. You know, I'm not in the right frame of mind. I forgot what they're called. But anyway, the thing that they use to roll the lumpias, or the egg rolls, if you will, is also refined and processed, and has starch, which has been proven is which has been proven that it could also convert to sugar. So the point I'm primarily trying to make by all this is the fact that I was brought up or raised on those foods that I was aware of. And again, it's important to understand the fact that I was born in 1976, and I can honestly tell you that it wasn't until the internet, AOL, You Got Mail became so prominent, I believe in the early 90s. What was it, 14 years later, that, I didn't have access to all this wealth of information. So all I'm saying is that, being brought up on the foods that I was used to eating, I had no concept of understanding what the glycemic index was. I didn't know what the ketogenic diet was. I didn't know what insulin was. And to be quite honest with you, at that time, I didn't even know what the terminology ketogenic diet meant. And I didn't know what cruciferous vegetables meant. And as I'm making this video, it's February 2025. It wasn't until a couple of years ago, I'm being quite honest with you, I did not realize what things like butternut squash, acorn squash, and even spaghetti squash were. I didn't know those things. So all I'm simply trying to say is that, in order to get healthy and approaching 50 years old, because I'm going to be 49 in June, I came to the realization that I had to try to experiment with much better foods that can give me the same amount of nutrients. However, that's lower in carbs and also lower in sugar, but higher in potassium. So just to give you an example, I'm not an expert in this area, but let's just say, for an example, okay, supposedly that a banana, for example, I don't know, I guess it probably has 140 milligrams, maybe 200 milligrams of potassium. That's true. A lot of people that you come in contact with, or even a doctor, would tell you, yes, bananas is a good source of potassium. That is true. But it's also high in sugar, especially the darker it gets. Green, not so high in the glycemic index. When it becomes yellow, it has a significant amount of sugar. But when the peel turns almost brown, very dark color, it's extremely high on the glycemic index. Why? Because it's reached that point where it's become so sweetened that it's overripe, if you will. So I'm just using that as an example that, yes, people may tell you that banana is a good source of potassium, but also I want to stress that it's also high in sugar and high on the glycemic index. Now, this part about experimenting with different foods, I didn't know what butternut squash, acorn squash, and spaghetti squash were. So using the internet, the luxury of the internet that we have, I was looking for alternatives to get even more potassium without all that sugar and without all those carbohydrates. Because it's been proven, according to what Dr. Eric Berg on YouTube has proven, that anytime you eat a high carbohydrate, especially high carbohydrate or especially high sugar foods, you're going to raise insulin. And it's going to reach the point where you're going to become insulin resistant. And to be quite honest with you, being 49 years old, approaching 40, that's not a risk that I'm willing to take. It really isn't. So I'm just giving you figurative numbers out there. butternut squash and acorn squash and spaghetti squash. All are much higher in potassium, which is in the approximately 300 milligram range, if I'm not mistaken. Again, not an expert in this area, but you compare that to banana, which is probably 50 to 100 milligrams lower potassium than the squashes that I mentioned. However, these squashes that I mentioned, have a lower sugar rate and also a lower carbohydrate rate. That's all I'm simply stating. So, all this thing about traditions and cultures and ethnic backgrounds and foods that we were brought up on, all I'm simply saying is that it wasn't until that we had the luxury of the internet to research things that I started experimenting with new foods, more foods that are effective in nutrients and not so high in sugar. That's all I wanted to say, and what I also wanted to say and stress is the fact that sometimes in order to get into better health, and according to what Dr. Eric Berg has taught throughout his videos, I'm 80 to 95% sure that if we follow his ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting plan without wavering and being self-disciplined, yeah, there's a good chance that you could reverse insulin resistance and diabetes. I'm not a diabetic. I don't want to become one, but last year I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes because I was eating too many carbs. And by eating too many carbs, my doctor told me after she had ran all the blood tests on me that I was a pre-diabetic. So all I'm saying is that regardless of the fact that it's not a problem now, I want to prevent it from becoming a problem. And so it just doesn't apply to me. It applies to everybody. Sometimes we're going to have to just step out of our tradition of the foods that we were used to eating all our lives. These tortilla chips, these corn chips, these foods that are packaged, especially the foods that are canned, they all have a great deal of preservatives. They're cooked to such a high degree, these canned goods, that it's lost all of its nutrients. And it's basically a futility to eat them if you're trying to get all these nutrients because they're gone after they've been cooked for such a long period of time. And as far as all these tortillas and these egg roll wraps that we buy, just using those two as an example, they have a great deal of starch, they have a great deal of flour, and they put so many artificial preservatives in them, which is not healthy. So that's just it. We're just going to have to try and experiment and research different foods that are higher on the good side, but even lower on the bad side. Lower bad side, of course, I'm referring to the carbohydrates, the preservatives, and the sugars. Anyway, I just want to close this video out. Thank you for all your support, all you viewers who watch my video. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.